Well, that was a big sigh. Are you okay? Thing with dogs, they let out huge sighs like they have the fate of the world on their shoulders, and they're just like, and it's just like, all your job in life to do is to give me comfort. So I guess to a degree for them, that is putting the weight of the world on their shoulders. So yeah, I guess that's valid. Um, so time to talk about Big Mom Part 2. So I brought out my porcelain strawberry covered decadent looking cake, because that's my go-to Big Mom prop for the most part, because I don't really have anything else that works for that. But have that. And today I will be discussing Big Mom from basically when the story begins, from like when Luffy sets out on his journey, up through the end of Totland. And then the next one for these I will do will be Big Mom from basically the little bit that we see during Reverie, which is not very much, and then all the way through to the end of Wano, which is as far as, at this point, as far as we are aware with Big Mom. Now, Oda did just start a new cover page series, that seems to be involving Wano, and that could possibly follow something and give us some information as to what happened to Kaido and Big Mom. And if that becomes relevant, if that becomes known within the time frame that I'm doing these videos, I'll make mention of it. But going into this part for Big Mom. So, at the beginning of the story, at the beginning of One Piece, when Luffy starts out, since Luffy has really no idea about the Yonko, we have no idea about the Yonko. And really the first time that we get any type of introduction to them is when they are at Water 7 and they are talking to Garp. And Garp mentions, Whitebeard and Shanks and Kaido and Big Mom as the Yonko, as, the 4 emperors of the sea at that time. Which, by the way, over the course of about 3 years, the structure of the Yonko that had stood for a while has just been messed with so much in regards to who's a Yonko and who's not a Yonko. And the only original Yonko left in the group is Shanks. All the other ones are now Blackbeard, Luffy, and Buggy. So the Yonko have gone through a big change. But then again, the Warlords also went through several big changes. That also included Buggy. In that regard. But so going into the story, we're just kind of introduced to the concept of the Yonko at Water 7, and we're vaguely introduced to Big Mom. We really don't get any other information about her, or to a degree Kaido for the most part, until later on. We actually get more information about Kaido before we really start to get too much information about Big Mom to a degree. And so it's assumed that when everything was happening at Marineford, that Big Mom, if possible, was probably watching it on whatever visual Dendenmushi that she had, considering that she has this huge information network that she set up over her whole time as a Yonko and as a pirate in general. Her having the ability to watch what happens at Marineford would be fairly interesting. Getting her opinions on what happened during that time frame would have been kind of interesting to see, or even in a flashback. I don't remember. I'm trying to remember if we get anything where we find out what her opinion of Whitebeard going and trying to save Ace, what was her opinion of that. I mean, by a technicality, I could see her kind of doing the same thing if it was for any of her children, as long as they hadn't betrayed her like she, perceives of Lola and Chiffon. If Katakuri had been captured by the world government, captured by the Marines, I can see Big Mom and her children rocking up to Marineford just the way that Whitebeard did in order to try to save her son, save Katakuri. I can see that. But we don't really know her whole opinion of what happened. We know that she has some opinion of Whitebeard. She probably at least has some fond memories from being on the Rocks Pirates crew. I know that there's probably theories out there that maybe some of the children, one of the children batches or whatever she has, might be a child of Whitebeard, just like there's this theory that one of them, that like Katakuri and his brothers are children of Kaido, and that, maybe some of the other children are a child of like Shiki or possibly Rocks himself, or Wang Ji or Silver Axe or something like that, that those are a possibility. And, if that's true, that's true. If that's not true, then oh well. But we really don't get that much information about Big Mom during the beginning of the story or during the first half of the story pre-time skip. During the time skip and into post-time skip, we get a bit more information. So during the time skip, Jinbei later on reveals that during the time skip, after Whitebeard fell, Fishman Island no longer had that protection. And because it was so vulnerable to pirate attacks and to the slave trade, that Jinbei, along with the Sun Pirates, went to Big Mom, and they basically made the deal with her that for Aladdin to marry Praline, so that way the Sun Pirates and Fishman Island as a whole would have the protection of Big Mom and her territory. And as part of that compensation for protecting them, they give her candy from their candy factory that is like this very delicious candy that she very much loves. And that's kind of the little bit of information that we get there, and she agrees, and she starts dealing with all of that, or starts taking in that type of setup. Now, unlike other places, because while Fishman Island is now Big Mom's territory, it is not a member of Totland. It is not part of Totland. And it has a weird setup because it is technically part of the world government, and the fact that Fishman Island was that the royal family were allowed to go to the Reverie this time around, but they're at that time frame they were previously associated with Whitebeard, then associated with Big Mom, then associated with Luffy, and the fact that he made it part of his territory. So there's like that little in-between area there. But unlike, the rest of Totland, Fishman Island is not subject to the whole, leave or life tax where it's, 1 month of your life for every, 6 months or whatever it is that you're in Totland. They're not subjected to that, probably because they're too far away from Big Mom to be able to exert her soul power that far away directly. But, all the rest of Totland is subject to that. It's never stated whether or not her children are immune from that. Children and in-laws and, respective pirate crews, like the fire tank pirates at the time, or the Sun Pirates, whether or not they still had to give the leave or life tax. That's never stated one way or the other. Jinbei is able to go back and forth between Fishman Island and Totland. We see that, but it's never stated beyond, him trying to leave the crew, what happens there. So that's basically what happens with that. The next kind of little bit that we are aware of is that there is a battle between Rouge, Mad Monk Rouge, and Snack, who was one of the former Sweet Commanders. Or he was a Sweet Commander at the time. He gets his butt whooped by Snack and is then demoted and is no longer a Sweet Commander. And Big Mom is just, created this storm and a fit of rage over the fact that, like, her son got defeated and made their family look weak. From there, there's really not a huge amount that we get. We know that during one of the tea parties, after Beiji had married into the family, because basically it's hinted that pretty soon after the Fire Tank Pirates arrived in the New World, that they made their way to Whole Cake Island, or they made their way to Big Mom's territory, to Totland. And from there, she allowed him to marry into the family, and he married Chiffon. Now, whether or not he got to pick from the sisters that would have been within, like, the right age range for him, and he picked Chiffon, or Big Mom is just like, you're taking Chiffon because I don't like to look at her type of a thing, is a bit of a left up for debate. I don't think that's ever stated. But thankfully, Chiffon and Beiji have an exceedingly wonderful marriage. And an adorable little baby. Pez is adorable. But during that time frame, that wedding happens. And then it's I don't know if it's stated if it's during that specific tea party or if it's just during one of the different tea parties that Big Mom has this incident where Mother Carmel's picture is almost broken, where it like falls from its chair, and in response Big Mom starts to emit this shrieking cry that stuns the assembly and unleashes her conquerors, Hockey and Waves, and this makes all of the guests collapse. And one of the things that happens is Beiji notices that she actually like scrapes her knee, and is able to injure herself in that regard because she's like let her defenses down, because her defenses are so emotionally connected to her, her emotions and her emotional well-being at that point in time. And he notices that that's when she's vulnerable, so he files that information away. From there, after the time skip, once we get into Fishman Island arc, our real big introduction to our first full-on introduction to Big Mom is when Pecoms and Tamago are in at Fishman Island there to collect the tax, collect the candy tax that the Fishman Island pays Big Mom. While they are there, they end up interacting with Luffy because Luffy ate all of the candy. And then they're like, oh, Mama's not gonna like that. And they somehow, because Big Mom has the tendency to, oh, this island did not pay its correct amount of taxes in regards to its food or whatever sustenance that it supplies that's useful to her, in regards to Totland. And she'll just go and destroy the island if they don't do that. She'll just send her children to like wipe out the island. But of course, we can't have that happen to Totland, have that happen to Fishman Island yet, because Luffy's the one that has to destroy Fishman Island. We'll see how that goes. But what ends up happening is they call Big Mom, and they have Luffy there, because it's like this whole conversation ends up happening where Luffy and Big Mom end up talking to each other over the Den Mushi, and she ends up we get like the first full image of her, because like Sanji had envisioned her as this like gorgeous woman at first, and then it's just like, well, she used to be. But we see like this big kind of hulking monster form of her that's just her like laying there and drooling out of her mouth, which is like, that's a good character introduction if there was any, in that regard. And her and, Luffy's like, I'm going to become king of the pirates, and I made this deal, blah, 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 blah. I'm the one that ate all the candy. Don't blame Fishman Island. I'll give you all this treasure that they gave me instead. And she decides to take the treasure because she knows that they'll make more candy for her, so it must be good enough that she's willing to wait. So Tamago and Pecoms take all of the treasure along with the Tamatebako back to Totland with them, and then Big Mom has all of that. The Tamatebako comes into play later on, of course. From there, there's not too much else we get up until we actually get to like Zoe, because like Big Mom is not part of what happens in Dressrosa, and she's not really part of what happens at Punk Hazard. Well, she's somewhat part of what happens at Punk Hazard, given the fact that she's the one that employed Caesar to try to do his gigantification experiments, and those, of course, get experimented on the children that are at Punk Hazard. Now, there is the side question that I do have in regards that we see how protective Big Mom is of children, and the fact that we see her, how protective she is of Tama and such, and how, kind and sweet she is to her own children when they are young. When they are young, I emphasize that part. That if she found out that Caesar had been experimenting on children, particularly that young of children, I wonder if Big Mom would have done anything to like punish him for that, or like been angry about that. That is one of those unanswered questions. I don't think we ever get an answer to that. But so she of course has him experimenting for the gigantification experiment. Unbeknownst to her, to a degree it might be, she does not know that he is experimenting on children and that it can lead to their death. She may not know that. I don't remember if that's ever explained. But what ends up happening is, of course, during that same time frame between when, Luffy and the others leave Fishman Island, and then when they have another interaction with, like, the Big Mom pirates in regards to Zoe, that is when Eustace Kid manages to attack. And I don't think it's ever stated specifically which of the Sweet Commanders he fights. he may have beat Snack again, but Snack wasn't a sweet commander at the time, so I think it's kind of deduced that he probably fought Cracker. And then Katakuri showed up and saved him, or whatever the case may be. But Eustace Kid managed to somehow get a rubbing of Big Mom's poneglyph, of the road poneglyph. So that's somewhat debatable about, like, okay, why did they have it in the first place? Why did the Sweet Commander have it in the first place on their ship? So that's never explained. But really the next bit that we get is that while all of this is also going on, Big Mom is also in talks with Finsmoke Judge, king of the Germa Kingdom. And they have made this deal that one of his children will marry one of her children. And he, of course, picks Sanji because Sanji is the one that is who is the most useless to him. And so he needs to get Sanji. And Big Mom picks Pudding because, in her opinion, Pudding is this wonderful little actress that can, play on Sanji's heartstrings and blah, 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 and manipulate him into, thinking that she's innocent and everything. And that was kind of shown when the fact that when Big Mom was done talking with Luffy, because she got angry about him saying that he was going to be king of the pirates, we see Big Mom show Pudding a poster of Sanji, and Pudding just looks at Sanji, and this is when it's like fully shown that she has 3 eyes, and she looks at the poster and she's like, he'll do. So it's like that whole thing. But so Big Mom's been working on setting up that. During that time frame, she also uses her information network to find out about Sanji and Zeph and the Baratier and all of that stuff. So they're able to use Zeph as like this countermeasure to prevent Sanji from trying to leave and run away and everything like that. So she sends, Beiji and Pekoms to go to Zou, and they bring back Sanji along with Caesar and such. So they have all of that going on. From there, really, that's where we start getting into Totland and into the whole Cake Island arc and into Totland and everything. So our first kind of full-on introduction to Big Mom, where we start getting to see more of her personality coming through, and more of the aspects of her personality, is when the family are getting ready to have, it's like 3 days before the big tea party that's going to be, when the wedding, quote unquote wedding, is going to be between Sanji and Pudding. And Big Mom is seen just like happily singing about her tea party and how wonderful this is going to be. And, with all of her homies and everything like that, we see, like this whole kind of, like, it is supposed to be set up like this Alice in Wonderland, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, dreamland fantasy type thing that looks like it walked out of like Flowers and Trees from Disney. And such. And so it's like this whole like dancing trees and singing flowers, and like Zeus and Prometheus roaming around, and her just singing, and a singing rainbow, which is just okay. She turns a rainbow into a homie. Okay. And like all this other stuff, and she's just like, so we see her dancing around and seeing like this kind of very humorous type of fantasy element to this. And what ends up happening is, so she's singing and happy about that. And she is, of course, told that, like her children and subordinates have been gathering up all of the ingredients that they need for the wedding cake, the special eggs, flour, fruits, all that type of stuff for the wedding cake. Which, it, of course, involves them kind of going and destroying these islands to get said items. Which I'm like, that seems overdone, but okay. And she, of course, has this confirmation that Luffy has made his way into Totland and everything like that, so she wants to kind of deal with that. The next thing that happens is we get to see the other side of Big Mom's, her craving side of things, where we see her running through, or rampaging through, Sweet City, and she, of course, wants the Croquem bush that she saw, and that had just made her go crazy with her hunger cravings, which, as I stated in the previous video, if I had to choose between living in Totland under Big Mom and living in Wano under Kaido, I would prefer to live in Totland, because while it is still not the best place to live under an emperor, that might be Shanks or Luffy or Whitebeard, it would at the very least seem a bit less dangerous than living with Kaido, living in Orochi's Wano. And as long as I stay on an island that Big Mom isn't on very often, I would be much safer because I would be much less likely to get involved in any of her rampages. And so that would be my plan. It's just like, I'll live in Hotland. I'm not living on Whole Cake Island. No, I'm not living there. But we see her going on this rampage through the city and, devouring parts of buildings, climbing them, acting like Godzilla at one point in time, screaming and begging and, blah, 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 for the Croquembouche. And, while her children are all trying to calm this down, one of her children, Charlotte Moscato, tries to reason with her. Does not work. She ends up literally pulling out like this huge amount of his lifespan, like possibly just like the whole remaining bit, pulls it out of him. And then I think it's just she just like, I don't remember what happens, because I think that lines up for when like Jinbei shows up with said Croquembouche homies and just like shoves them into Big Mom's mouth. And she's able to eat them, and she's able to then like, oh, her cravings thing is over and she's fine. And either she just like lets go of like the lifespan that was from her son, and it just like kind of dissipates, and then like we see that Montdor yells at one of like the gathering homie things to just like gather up all of those and put all the soul pieces as much as possible back into Moscato. So there's that. And we see Moscato later, and he's at least up and moving and part of the fight, trying to deal with the Straw Hats and the Vinsmokes and the Fire Tank Pirates later on after the wedding. And he seems somewhat okay, but I don't know how much longer he's gonna live. But of course, what ends up happening from there is, of course, Jinbei and Big Mom talk, and she doesn't really have a memory of going into her rampage mode. I'm like, I guess that's one way to dissuade yourself of the guilt. But she has those memory issues, which of course get played upon later in Wano with her amnesia and everything. But what ends up happening is, of course, Jinbei talks to her, and he's trying to tell her that he wants to leave the Big Mom Pirates. And of course, she's not happy about that. But it's like, he's literally trying to explain to her the fact of like, okay, I personally am going to leave. My crew, Aladdin and the rest of the Sun Pirates and, Praline, your daughter, they're still going to stay here in Totland and still be your allies. I personally am leaving. But of course, Jinbei is kind of like the centerpiece of the Sun Pirates, because he is the one that is this former warlord that has turned against the world government and abdicated and resigned as a warlord. So he's kind of like this little fun oddity thing that like Big Mom can claim as part of her crew. And I think that's part of the reason. Also, it's like he wants to leave, and you got to spin the roulette wheel. We know Jinbei at that point in time retracts his request to leave. That comes up later. From there, it is revealed that, Sanji has been given to the Vinsmoke, so that's all going on, and they bring Caesar to where Big Mom is. And Caesar literally tries to beg Big Mom to give him a second chance in regards to his gigantification serum and everything. And that's just hilarious. And he's like, the Straw Hats destroyed all my work, but I can reproduce it in 2 weeks. And she's like, okay. Caesar, why did I say 2 weeks? I'm an idiot. And then, of course, he has Perospero make Caesar this gorgeous... Hey, Perospero is very good at meticulously designing his candy fruit stuff. Or not candy fruit, his lick fruit stuff. And he makes like this huge exact model of, Caesar's, lab facility and stuff like that for Caesar to work in. And then, of course, later on we see, Perospero make, you know, like the staircase for all the candy and everything, the candy staircase at the wedding and everything like that. So it's just like, I love those designs that he makes. So he is very talented with that. I will give him that. So that's going on there. While this is going on, you know, that's all, you know, it's basically like, oh, if you don't do this, Caesar, you're going to get killed by Perospero and everything. From there, really the next thing that we get is when Big Mom is told that and this is like going over the course of like several days before the wedding, because like, you know, Luffy and the others have arrived at the islands and she's aware of that, and of course Pudding is tricking them to go to the seducing woods, and of course that results in, you know, Nami and Luffy and Carrot and, you know, Chopper all in the seducing woods, and then having to deal with like Cracker and Brulee and everything like that. So Big Mom is aware of all of that. She's also informed that Cracker gets defeated, which makes her upset, and this makes her make a storm around Sweet City that then allows that then messes some more with like Luffy and Nami, and that allows Luffy and Nami to be captured by other, you know, the other Big Mom's other children and the other members of her pirate crew. So they're all gathered up. From there, Big Mom goes and is actually getting ready to have lunch with the Vinsmoke family, where she's going to meet Sanji, and where Sanji and Pudding are going to meet for the first time, and where her and Judge are going to talk. So that all happens, and they have like this somewhat nice lunch together with talking, tea, and so many other things that are just singing food. And to quote Rizzo the Rat from Muppet's Christmas Carol, Mother always said never eat singing fruit. You know, to quote that, or to paraphrase him. So all of that is happening. From there, Big Mom then ends up going to have this kind of well, before the lunch, we get to see her interact with her younger children. So her youngest child is Charlotte Anana, who is adorable and loves knives, which is not the best thing for a child to like, but you get the idea. Her interacting with the two, I think her two youngest sons that are like Dulce and Dragre, who are like the two little twins with the balloons that she likes to pop their balloons and stuff like that. And she, you know, all the younger children are kind of like arguing, or like, yeah, this happened, or no, that didn't happen, or yay, we're having a good day, or like that type of stuff. So we get to see her, all of that, and Big Mom has absolutely no problems at all with Anana's murderous tendencies, which I'm like, raising a serial killer there, lady. And later on in the Vinsmoke cover story, we see Anana ready to help dissect Ichiji and or not Ichiji, Yonji and Ichiji, whichever one's getting ready to help dissect them. So I'm like, okay then. So that's happening. But what ends up happening is, of course, she goes to lunch with the Vinsmokes and everything like that, and Sanji, and they have like the somewhat nice lunch and discuss the wedding and everything, and, you know, all of that. From there, she then takes them to her prison library, where she shows them all of these different collections of rare animals and people that she has like pinned inside of the books because of Monthdor, that he's able to like make the books and then like can pin people and animals and stuff like that inside of them. And we see her, you know, flipping through them and like showing off, like, this is a unicorn, this is, you know, one of the chimeras, this is blah 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 that escaped from Impel Down, this is a long-limbed human, this is, you know, blah 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 blah. And the Vinsmokes, as twisted as Vinsmoke's Judge is, I kind of think he's even kind of uncomfortable with like what she's showing him. I don't know about the other boys, about Sanji's brothers. Reiju is uncomfortable with it. I don't know about the other three. Whether or not whether or not that they would, whether how uncomfortable they are with the situation, but Judge is somewhat uncomfortable with the situation, even everything that he's done. So they have all of that. From there, there's a few other things that kind of happen in rapid succession. Big Mom has a meeting with Sanji where Sanji makes this request that that as long as he marries, Pudding, that she will allow his crew to leave Totland safely. She agrees, as long as he goes along with the wedding willingly, which he will. And, that's what he agrees to. It's a lie. Bold-faced lie. So there's all of that. We also have the moment where Judge makes the comment that, like, he's seen so many of the other races in Totland, but he hasn't seen any giants. And Big Mom is very displeased by this, and she's like, well, you just must have missed them, which, of course, is, like, pushing her buttons when it comes to the whole giant situation with A, everything that happened when she was a kid, B, everything that happened with Loki a couple of years ago with Lola involved. So that's just like, yeah, let's not push the giant woman's buttons who can literally squish you and rip your soul out very easily. Because, no offense, Judge is not afraid of death when it comes to trying to face down Big Mom in that regard and not having his soul sucked out. So there's that. From there, they have the moment where after the Vinsmokes leave, she ends up having a call from her throne room that is connected down to the prison area where Nami and Luffy are being held captive. And Big Mom is talking with Luffy over the Den Den Mushi. And he is, like, yelling at her and saying that he's still going to become king of the pirates and everything like that. And she's, of course, told that they have part of Lola's Viva card, and of course that results in her revealing how angry she is at Lola. And I mean, okay, there is the question that I have when it comes to Totland and Big Mom, that had it been that Lola had left on better terms with her, well, from Lola's perspective it was good terms with her mother, but if everything with Prince Loki hadn't gone down and Lola still left and it didn't result in Big Mom losing her chance to have the giants as part of her crew, she'd probably still be upset that her child left, but maybe not to the extent that she is. But she, of course, she wants to know where Lola is so that way she can then send her children after Lola to deal with Lola. So she can, assassinate Lola, which, okay, woman. So Luffy and Big Mom have, like, that whole interaction there where he's yelling at her while he's, like, trapped and pinned inside of one of the month door books and everything. So we're having that whole instance happen there before she just, like, hangs up because she's lost interest in talking with Luffy. She also taunts him quite a bit. After that, she has to go to her treasure room because that's where Brook is and where he's managed to get in and is trying to get rubbings of the poneglyphs, which she is not happy about. And she gets in there, and this results in a rather cool fight that we see happen between Big Mom and Brook, because we find out that she tries to use her soul fruit powers on Brook's returned fruit powers, and it does not work. She cannot pull his soul out of his body. She cannot try to strip him of his lifespan. And that impresses her, which is saying something because she hasn't really found anyone who can, like, do that, who's, like, not, like, terrified of her, like, taking their soul. So she's impressed by that. And then, of course, she's very bemused by his little fact of being an oddity, of being this skeleton that is alive and can, like, sing and talk and all of this other stuff and fight and has all these other abilities. And she wants to have Brook and, like, keep him as, like, this, like, doll that she can then, have as, like, a thing for amusement and, stuff like that. And my answer, nope. Nope, just nope. I don't want that. Would not want that at all. Not at all. And, like, from there would be, like, all of that stuff that happens. There's all of that fight that happens, which is actually a really fun fight between Big Mom and Brook. And it's like, he tries to, like, stab her in the chest, and that doesn't work. And he, like, he actually berates her and saying, now, be nice, young lady, and everything like that. Because compared to Big Mom, or compared to Big Mom is a bit younger than him. But let's see, Big Mom is 68, I think. I think so. No. Yeah. 68. Yeah, she's 68 because she had children all the way up until she was 60, and Anana is 8. So yeah, she's 68, and then Big Brooke is, 92 at this point in time. So he's like, yeah, he's a bit older than her. That is one of those other things where it's just like, he may have heard of the Rocks Pirates, even though he's, was, trapped in the fog for so long. He may have known about the Rocks Pirates, or he may have heard of, like, an up-and-coming pirate named Charlotte Linlin. And that would be an interesting comparison to find out, like, what he knows about her, and if she'd ever heard of the Rumbar Pirates. Probably not, since they weren't, like big and notorious and infamous, but maybe she did. I don't know. But what ends up happening is, of course, they have this big fight, and Brooke does fairly well, but he still gets knocked out. Actually, he plays knocked out. And she's able to then, he's also able to, like, wound Prometheus, which comes into play later and is very useful later. That he has that knowledge that he's able to. But, she ends up, capturing him, and she has him basically strip searched by the Peacekeeper soldiers to see if he has any of the rubbings of the poneglyphs, which he does not, or at least to all appearances, he does not. It's revealed later that he, of course, has them inside of his skull, which I'm like, that thing has to be bigger on the inside. Your skull has to be bigger on the inside because you fit, like, these 3 huge poneglyph rubbings in your freaking skull, Brooke. It's bigger on the inside. It has to be like a TARDIS. And, so she wants to keep him as, like, her pet. And Brooke is also there to witness when Big Mom and Pudding are talking, because Pudding mentions that she's, playing Sanji for a fool and everything like that. And, about her role to assassinate the Vinsmokes and everything like that during the wedding. And this is how Brooke finds out about it, because then he's able to then tell the rest of the Straw Hats, the rest of the Sanji retrieval team and everything like that. So they're down with the plan of trying to save Sanji and his family by extension. And so we see Big Mom and Pudding talking about, like, what Pudding's role in the wedding is going to be, and at the wedding, during the vows or whatever, where he's supposed to kiss her, she's supposed to shoot Sanji, and such. And this is after she's tested her, like, candy revolver bullets on Reiju to prove that they work, and then mess with Reiju's memories. So that's all happening. That night, Big Mom goes to bed, and she has Brooke with her, as, like, laying in the bed with her, which is just hilarious. And then, of course, the Sanji retrieval team has to then work on, plus Jinbei have to work on trying to save Brooke from a sleeping Big Mom, which they manage to do. And they replace him with this normal skeleton with, like, fake hair on it. And the next morning she wakes up and she's actually really sad because she thinks that Brooke had died. And then she's like, ugh, and then just, like, tosses him aside to get ready for the wedding, because she's like, yay, wedding. And we get to the actual big wedding moment, the big tea party moment, on top of Whole Cake Chateau, which I'm like, I love the design of Whole Cake Chateau. It is amazingly well designed in regards to all the thought that Oda put into all of the different floors. I love it. And what ends up happening is, of course, Big Mom is, at the top and everything, and they have the portrait of Mother Caramel there on display, and we have some bozo who tries to ask her about Mother Caramel, and she just, like, angrily knocks him out with her hockey, and then is like, don't pry into my memories, type of a thing. And it's like, as I stated in the last video, it's just like, I have this feeling that, like, Big Mom may have told her children, her older batches of children, her first several stories about Mother Caramel, because Mother Caramel would have meant a lot to Big Mom, and she may have told her children those stories, because, like, they may have asked about the portrait, and she may have just told them, and that just seems reasonable to me. It's just that this dude who's at the tea party is not necessarily someone that she's deemed worthy of knowing who Mother Caramel is. from there, we have the moments where she's interacting with the different, rulers of the underworld, Morgans and Drug Peklo and Stussy and the other ones. Those are the only the ones that I actually kind of care about. I can't remember their names in all honesty. Is like talking with them, and like they're like, oh, we brought you a treasure chest, because like that's a good way to get into Big Mom's good graces. It's like, oh, treasure chest, because like she's a pirate and she's has her inner child and she loves opening treasure chests. And so they have all of that, and of course she shows them the Tamate Bako, and that she's going to be opening that after the wedding. Unbeknownst to her, there's a bomb in the box, and has been for quite a while. God forbid that thing accidentally got opened while Peckham's and Tamago were on their way out of Fishman Island, and it blew up while they were on their way back up to the surface. I guess that would have been one way to deal with that problem, but they wouldn't have opened it unless it accidentally got open, like what happens at the wedding. Yeah. But so she's like ready to watch as like the wedding happens, and of course she's very happy that Pudding looks gorgeous in her wedding dress and everything seems to be going well. But it doesn't, because everything starts to just go to heck in a handbasket, because Pudding tries to shoot Sanji, and then that doesn't work because Sanji, is able to like charm her. And then she tries to have the priest shoot Sanji, and that doesn't work. And then she tries to have Katakuri do it with a jelly bean and accidentally hits the priest instead. And then all hell breaks loose because the cake explodes, because the wedding cake explodes, and it's Luffy, all the different Luffy clones jumping out and starting to just cause nothing but chaos. And everything starts happening, and everything just is going to, as I said, heck in a handbasket. And while all of this is going on, Jinbei, acting as a distraction, goes up to Big Mom, and he's giving her the sake cup and telling her, I'm done, I'm leaving, I'm going, I'm breaking this pact that we have between you and the me and the Sun Pirates and everything like that, which makes her freaking angry. And then she tries to take Jinbei's lifespan, but she can't, because Jinbei is not afraid of death. He's not afraid of death by Big Mom. And he, so she can't take his lifespan. And while all of this is happening, Brook, in disguise, has made his way over to where Mother Caramel's portrait is, and with Big Mom watching as he does it, smashes it. And that starts to make her snap. There's something else that happens, and then Luffy has to like re-show her the broken pieces to get Big Mom to remember that the portrait got broken, and that just makes her fully snap. And her, her Conqueror's Haki gets released along with that scream and everything like that. And, we get the whole flashback where it's her mourning what happened to Mother Caramel and all the other children from the sheep's house and everything like that. And we get that whole flashback that I literally went over in the previous video for this, previous Big Mom video. And while this is happening, Beiji and his crew are attempting to kill Big Mom by shooting her with the KX launchers in an attempt to, because her defenses should be down while all of this is going on. And they all have like the special earplugs in, so they're kind of immune to what's going on. And they Nami and Chopper and Carrot are like freeing the Vin smokes while all of this is going on as well. And Big Mom is just having this moment where everything, like, she's just snapped. And they launch the launchers at her, but unfortunately they don't reach her, and they blow up in midair before they're actually able to get to her. So that prevents that from happening. From there, it also shatters the mirror they were going to try to use to escape, so that doesn't work. Very shortly after this, Big Mom is attacking Beiji while he's in his, big father castle form, and trying to defend, Chiffon and Pez and the rest of the Fire Tank Pirates and the Sanji retrieval team and the Vinsmokes and such inside of him, and he's trying to defend them while they come up with a plan. And Big Mom is just ripping off pieces and punching and everything like that and causing a huge amount of damage to that. From there, we have it that Luffy actually does clash with Big Mom. He does actually try to fight her. Not in like the point where he knows that he's going to do a lot of damage to her at this point in time, but more of, I'm going to act as a distraction. And this is where we get one of the moments where it's like Luffy starting to act as a distraction to allow the rest of the Sanji retrieval team and the Fire Tank Pirates and stuff to start escaping. And so he acts as enough of a distraction, as do, Ichiji, Yonji, and Niji, and Reiju, and Judge, all working as distractions, so that way the others can try to go, because Judge does not want to feel like he owes Sanji and the Straw Hats any type of a favor, because that's just the kind of a-hole that Judge is. And what happens is, of course, they're dealing with all of that. Big Mom is very easily able to just like knock Niji and Yonji aside and everything like that. But while all of that is happening, the Tamate Bato box ends up getting opened. I think it's, I don't remember who opens it. It might be Drug Peklo, I don't remember. But like, he opens it, and then he gets killed by Stussy, and then it falls and lands at the bottom of the whole cake chateau, where it promptly explodes because the bomb has been activated. And that starts to cause the whole cake chateau to start to fall to the ground, with Big Mom on top of it. And then, of course, allows the Straw Hats and Sanji retrieves them to actually escape, with like Caesar carrying Beiji while all the rest of them are inside of him. So that's all happening. So as the whole cake chateau falls, we have the moment where Stroyson uses his cook fruit powers to stab the whole cake chateau with his knife and cut it and turn it into literally a giant cake. So that way it doesn't actually destroy Sweet City at the bottom of, that's surrounding the bottom of Whole Cake Chateau. And so that whole thing happens. Big Mom easily survives that. And then when it's revealed that, like, the wedding, she's remembered that the wedding cake is gone, she then has to deal with, we have the moment where Big Mom starts her rampage again, where she is on her wedding cake craving rampage, which then lasts for a good chunk of the rest of the arc. And we see her, Perospero lies to her and tells her that, well, first of all, she deals with Opera, who had lied to her, saying that the Straw Hats had been still captured. And so he's punished and gets his lifespan ripped out, where he is just straight up killed. And then we have the moments where she deals with Perospero, and he lies to her and tells her that there is a duplicate cake, but the Straw Hats stole it. So that's sending Big Mom after the Straw Hats, and we have all these moments where, she's trying to catch up with them as they're making their way through the Seducing Woods, and as they're trying to make their way through other areas, and eventually get to, the Sunny and everything, and trying to deal with everything that's going on the Sunny with Katakuri and Brule and Perospero and all of that stuff. And having all of those, issues going on there. And, from there, we have the moments where, Nami is, starting to, like, lure Zeus away and everything like that. Gets continued to be distracted by Nami and everything like that. And, has these other moments where, like, Nami, because of the weather egg that Zeus ate, is actually able to use him to, like, unleash this enormous thunderbolt that strikes Big Mom, and it's enough to leave her on a crater, so she's kind of like at least down for the count for a very short amount of time that allows them more time to escape. She's down, but she's definitely not out for very long, and she gets back up and keeps chasing them. And basically we have these moments where, as Luffy and Katakuri are fighting in the Mirror World, and Sanji, Pudding, and Chiffon have all headed to Cacao Island to start making a new version of the wedding cake so they can do all of that. And then Nami and the rest of the Straw Hats, rest of the Sanji retrieval team, minus Pedro, minus Pedro, are all working on sailing their way through Totland to try to get their way back out to, freedom. And while all of this is going on, they are continuously being chased by Big Mom. And this works over the next 12 hours, all night long, all the way into the next morning. And as this is going on, we see Big Mom slowly lose more and more weight because her cravings are so much, and I guess her metabolism is so high that she is just losing so much weight as she's, fighting the Straw Hats and using up that energy and not really eating anything else. She's also causing different rampages on some of the other islands. Like, I think we see her on Nuts Island causing problems there. And there's, like, a few of the other islands that we see her rampaging through at various points in time. And, so all of that's happening. We also see her, she actually ends up attacking the Straw Hats several times during all this time frame. She shows up and starts yelling at them about where the cake is. And I'm like, okay, you can tell how far her logic has gone out the window, because the wedding cake itself is bigger than the Thousand Sunny. And even if they wanted to, and if they had the cake, it would not fit on the boat, and it would not fit to the point where they would be able to hide it from her. And she keeps trying to, like, get to the areas where, like, the stuff where, like, she thinks the cake is, and it's, there's no cake there. So it's just like, the cake is a lie, literally. I love that entire thing. It's like, the cake is a lie, but it's not a lie, because Sanji and Pudding are actually, and Chiffon and all those other chefs are making the goddamn cake. Are making a new wedding cake. So all of that is going on. And, so everything is happening there. Eventually, the next morning, they are able to, by the time all of this is going on, Zeus has been, like, kind of somewhat lured away from Big Mom and ends up going with Nami by the time all of this is all done. And she takes him with her, and then everything else will happen at Wano later that I'll go over later. And what happens is Big Mom is finally given her cake, is given the wedding cake. I'll be having wedding cake in April at my cousin's wedding. And then wedding cake, and then later in the summer for my other cousin's wedding. So that'll be fun. And what happens is, I won't go on as anywhere of a rampage like Big Mom. I'll just be like, oh yay, cake. But what ends up happening is, of course, they get the cake ready via Beiji and the Nostra Castello. They're able to deliver the wedding cake to one of the islands, and she gets to the island, and Perospero has a thought of, like, well, the options are either A, they put poison in the cake and it will kill Big Mom, and that won't be good. They put poison in the cake and it won't kill her, but it'll make the cake taste horrible, and that won't be good. They made the cake and they didn't put anything in it, and it might taste horrible, and that'll make her angry. Or the fourth option, which he thinks is the least likely, they made the cake perfect and it tastes even better than the original wedding cake. And it'll just make Big Mom the happiest she's ever been. It's like, those are the four options. Thankfully, it lands on it's the best cake Big Mom has ever had. And she gets to the island where the cake is, and it's on Funwani Island, which I do not remember which island that is. I'll go over it in a different video. She gets to the island and she sees the cake, and it's gorgeous, and Sanji and Pudding did an amazing job, and she takes one bite first, and then it's the most amazing thing she's ever tasted, and she just starts to devour the entire thing. And while she's doing this, she's literally having, like, an out-of-body experience where she's, like, having her flashbacks and to her birthday party when she was 6 years old, where Mother Carmel and the Sheep's House children were there, and she's just remembering them so much, and, like, how happy she was on that day, and, like, seeing them again in her mind as she's, like, eating the cake, because it's the best thing she's ever had. And she's just, it eats the entire thing. The entire thing. And Perospero is just like, I guess it was the one where they didn't put any poison in it and it tastes amazing. Okay. So Perospero is just like, okay, fine, I'll take that because it means I don't die. Is like his answer, because because she had told him that had the Straw Hats not had the wedding cake, she was going to kill him for it. And I'm like, okay, woman, you need to go to therapy. Majorly. And what ends up happening is, of course, while Big Mom's eating the wedding cake, that's while the Straw Hats are trying to escape, and the rest of the Sanji retrieval team and the Fire Tank Pirates are trying to escape, along with the Vinsmokes and everything. And so it's never 100% explained how the Straw Hats are 100% able to escape. We know that the Sun Pirates, along with Jinbei, stay behind to like act as a distraction, because at the very least they can dive underwater and swim away once the Straw Hats have been taken care of, or Straw Hats have been able to escape, and they have those moments. And Luffy is just kind of like worn out at this point in time by the time he gets back to the ship, because he's been fighting Katakuri for 12 hours straight, basically. Give or take 10-minute intervals here and there, so that way he can rest and get his haki back and everything, which is a good way of like strength training your haki in that regard, and all of that. So that's been going on. And then what ends up happening is, of course, Big Mom has, we get like the ending of it where it's like they just kind of have like this, in the anime it's kind of this like orchestral score that they start playing. And in the manga, it's not 100% explained how they managed to escape, but the Sanji retrieval team somehow managed to escape Totland via... and she, they escape Big Mom, which does not make Big Mom happy. And all of that. And... so she's going to chase after them, which of course leads into the Reverie arc, which I'll go over more next time, along with Wano, because what happens with the Reverie arc leads into what happens with Wano. So yeah, we have all of this that happens with Totland, which is like almost an hour-long video itself for everything that happens with Totland and Big Mom, and I'm pretty sure I skipped a little bits here and there. But I got most of it, so that's the important thing. I do have to admit, I do like the battle that happened. I do love the battle that happens between like Brook and Big Mom, and how he kind of outsmarts her, because he pretends he didn't get the poneglyph rubbings, and he actually did, and then he hides them in his, skull, and then he's fighting her while he has them in his skull, and then he has to pretend to be like a, like he's knocked out, and be like the little doll for her to have, which I just find kind of funny. And just brilliant on Brook's part in that regard. So that's what I have for this one. The next one will be Reverie. For Big Mom will be Reverie all the way through to the end of Wano, and any of that additional stuff that we may get by that point in time, I don't know. But that's what we have. I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. And wedding cake. Bye.